Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Inside the Americas. Coming up in the show. Devastating wildfires on the west coast of the United States spreads toxic smoke further into the country as the natural disaster becomes a war of words in the debate on climate change. Looking ahead to the presidential election and America's still undecided, Donald Trump's opponent, Joe Biden, may be ahead in the latest polls, but some criticize his campaign of being too tame. We speak to Sonia Dridi, the author of a new book released here in France about the Democratic candidate. And we check out the French film making waves across the Atlantic and prompting calls to cancel streaming giant Netflix amid conservative claims the film hypersexualizes young girls. First, the wildfires on America's west coast are the worst in recorded history, and scientists say because of climate change, it's likely they'll get even more frequent and more ferocious in the future. Yet US President Donald Trump continues to deny what scientists say is a reality, even during a visit to survey the damage this week. James Wilson reports.
This is Portland on the west coast of the United States. It's the largest city in the state of Oregon, and it's blanketed in a toxic haze of smoke. It may seem shocking, but scientists say wildfires in the region are getting progressively worse, and so images like this will become more common. People have complained the city is unrecognizable, and Portland is now in the top 5 cities worldwide for worst air quality. Unsurprisingly, locals are concerned about their health.
In the morning, it's hard, yes. When you wake up, your eyes get open, yeah, I feel it.
Most scientists say that higher temperatures from climate change leads to drier soil and, as such, larger wildfires. But not everyone agrees. In neighboring California, one official found himself publicly rebuked by President Trump.
And we're seeing this warming trend make our summers warmer, but also our winters warmer as well. If we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay. It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually.
And Trump's views are common among his voters in the American heartland. Paul Romero is one such supporter. A veteran of the United States military, he doesn't believe in man-made climate change and says the wildfires are mostly caused by criminals and left-wing pyromaniacs.
There's those that want to listen to the truth and those that want to listen to what's been fed to them, you know, and the thing is we have a media, worldwide media, that has been very much in support of supporting the whole idea of climate change. I agree it exists, but not in the capacity they're talking about. They're talking about us directly affecting and changing this. You can't.
And we are not.
We are a flea on the dog's back, okay? Legitimately, that's where we are.
According to recent studies, nearly 2/3 of Republican supporters do not believe climate change is man-made, making Americans the most sceptical nationality in the world on the issue.
Now to the presidential campaign trail in the United States. Well, today we're taking a look at the opposition camp. He's been accused of running simply an anti-Trump campaign with little substance of its own, but Joe Biden is edging ahead in the polls, and author Sonia Dridi has been looking into the strategy, the profile and the trajectory of the former vice president in her new book, which is released in France this week. Sonia, welcome to the show. We're more used to seeing you in your role as Washington correspondent for our sister channel in French here on France 24. Now, as we mentioned, Biden's made the most of opportunities to paint Trump in a dim light. But do you think that a strategy based on discrediting Trump is enough to get him to the White House come November 3rd?
No, I don't think it's enough, but it's true that Joe Biden is a default candidate, so he doesn't need to do much. There is a whole part of America who really want to go and vote for him, even if they think he's like a candidate who is boring, pretty bland, but they just want to get rid of Trump. But the turnaround this year is going to be very important because we know that in 2016, a lot of Democrats, especially the young people, didn't go vote. So that's going to be very important this year, the participation in the election. To motivate the Americans, Joe Biden also have to have a program, and lately he adopted some proposition, for instance, from the Bernie Sanders program, like the minimum wage and the free university for certain students. So that's he really needs to motivate the Democrats. That's going to be the turnout is really going to be key for this election.
Now, Sonia, you mentioned in the introduction to your book that you weren't too sure about whether you wanted to write about someone seen as so smooth, who some have described as a has-been, or using Donald Trump's nickname for him, Sleepy Joe. You mentioned the word boring there, which is often associated with him. But in the end, you found the research stage quite enlightening. Did you discover anything about him that upturns that stereotype?
Yeah, well, today he's definitely seen as a candidate who is pretty boring. He's old. He's not the candidate from the new generation, but he has a pretty fascinating life. He had a lot of tragedy and success. He was elected senator when he was very young, and a little time after that, he lost his first wife and his daughter, who was 13 months old. And he almost gave up politics, and then he kept fighting and stayed senator for almost 40 years. He also has a very interesting character. Sometimes he really exaggerates. So, for instance, he said that he was arrested trying to see Mandela in jail in South Africa, but he never was arrested. He likes to portray himself, for instance, as someone who used to go protest for during the segregation, and he didn't go to that much protest. So he's pretty fascinating characters. He also sometimes loses his nerves pretty quickly. So that might be interesting when he's facing Donald Trump during the debates. So it's just a character that is much more complex, much more interesting, I think, than the image that we have from him today.
Mm-hmm. And then there is this popular idea right now that Americans are tired of Donald Trump, and that fatigue will be a major advantage for Biden. But Trump does have some pretty steadfast support as well. Do you think his camp is holding firm?
Yeah, his camp is definitely holding firm. I mean, Donald Trump is still very popular among the Republicans. I think in the last survey, like 91% of Republicans say that they're still happy with Donald Trump. So Donald Trump, is keeping his electoral base, but he didn't win a lot of other votes these past few years. And so Joe Biden also is appealing to the blue collar that are really that Donald Trump is really popular with too. He's also, Joe Biden, the candidate of the middle class. So if the Democrats are going to vote, are going out to vote or vote by mail, Joe Biden has a chance to win because he can go and try to get votes among electorates that are pretty popular with Donald Trump. But the Donald Trump is still very popular, and so really the battle is going to play in some key states like Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, and today I think it's impossible to say who's going to win.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Sonia Dridi speaking to us there from Washington. Now moving on, our number of the week is $12 million. That's a sum awarded to Breonna Taylor's family in their wrongful death lawsuit. Taylor was killed by police in March of this year when officers raided her apartment looking for someone else. The settlement's the result of an agreement with the city of Louisville, Kentucky, which sought to close the civil case against local law enforcement authorities. It's one of the highest payouts to be awarded in such a case, and it reflects the widespread campaigning for justice for Breonna Taylor as part of the Black Lives Matter movement. Representatives of Taylor's family are still pushing for the criminal case to be brought against the officers involved in her death. Moving to the world of cinema now, a French film has found itself at the centre of controversy over the hypersexualisation of young girls. It's called Cuties, or Mignonnes, here in France, And the irony is that it's being accused of the very thing the film is trying to criticise, according to its director. The backlash has prompted an online campaign to cancel Netflix, its distributor in the United States. Monty Francis explains.
At first, the French coming-of-age film Cuties was celebrated, an award winner at Sundance earlier this year, described as a thoughtful examination of the hypersexualization of young girls. But since the movie started streaming on Netflix in the US, the backlash has been hard to understate. The hashtag Cancel Netflix trending online, and a Change.org petition to remove the film, with 600,000 signatures and counting.
Netflix promoting this show called Cuties.
A U.S. senator even called for the Justice Department to investigate whether Netflix was distributing child pornography. The movie centers on an 11-year-old French Senegalese girl who feels alienated from her family and makes friends with a group of neighborhood girls training for a dance competition. The film's director, Mamouna Doucouré, describes it as feminist, a thoughtful examination of what it means to be an adolescent girl in today's world. But the promotional images provided by Netflix showed otherwise, young girls in skimpy clothes in provocative poses, much different than the poster for the original French film. Netflix has since apologized for its misleading marketing, saying it's a social commentary against the sexualization of young children. The company and the director are encouraging people to watch the film before they criticize it.
And finally, with many restaurants shut for months on end due to the COVID-19 pandemic, takeaway meals emerged as a viable compromise for many. Food delivery in Washington, D.C. now comes with an extra shot of glamour. Drag queens bring your order right to your door and throw in a performance with your meal. It's all carried out at a safe distance, of course. Well, that's all for today's show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time for Inside the Americas here on France 24.
From North to South Africa, from Bamako to Nairobi, from Accra to Mogadishu. Bringing you all the political, economic, cultural and social news from Africa for a better insight into an ever-changing continent.
Across Africa, presented by Georgia Calvin-Smith on France 24 and France24.com.